Today we're talking about shuffling questions in eClass quizzes. So I'm going to show you 3 different ways to do it. We don't have time to really get into all of the details of setting up a quiz. So what I've done ahead of time, and I'll share my screen in a second here. What I've done is I've set up 3 different types of quizzes in eClass. So the first one is going to be a quiz where every student gets the same questions, but the order will be shuffled. The second one will be every student will be getting questions drawn from a pool of questions that you've created ahead of time. So we'll say each student is going to get 5 of 10 multiple choice questions you've created and 1 essay question out of a pool of 4. And then the third type is going to be a versioned quiz where you've set up 2 different versions of a quiz with different questions, and you want different students within the class to get each of those versions. So you'll notice I have my CTL workshop section and all my different types of quizzes here. So the first one we're going to look at is CTL workshop quiz shuffled. So this is going to be the one where all the students are getting the same questions, but they're going to be in a different order. So I'm going to click on the quiz here. Look at this page, and then I'm going to click on the gear in the top right and click on edit quiz. If you haven't added questions to quizzes before, you may be wondering why I didn't just click on the edit quiz button here. That is because if I click on the edit quiz button and I add a couple of questions and then I leave the quiz, do something else, and want to come back and edit it later, as soon as you've added any questions, this button disappears. So the way you'd get back to that edit quiz page is by clicking on the gear and clicking on edit quiz. So now if you haven't worked on the quiz previously, you'll see something like this, just an empty page. And on the right, you'll notice that there's an add button. So I'm going to click add, and because I want everybody to get the same questions, and I've already created these questions in my question bank. If you haven't created any questions, you also could add a new question right within the quiz. But for the purposes of this workshop, we're going to assume that you already had created the questions. So I'm going to click from question bank. I'm going to select one of my categories that I want to draw the questions from. So let's say this was my midterm version 2 here. And it has 25 questions. I want to include all of these questions, so I'm going to click on the checkbox right at the top. Now I'm going to have to move you around because you're in the way of my add button. I'll scroll to the bottom and click on add selected questions to the quiz. So now all of my questions show up in a list here. And if I want to shuffle them, you'll notice right at the top, there's a little shuffle button that I can check off. And that means that every student who takes the quiz is going to receive these questions in a different order. So that's one of the easier ways to shuffle quiz questions. We're going to move on to the second one now. So I'm going to move back to my sandbox page here, and we're going to look at random questions. So some of the different reasons you might want to use this type of randomization is, say you have a quiz that's going to include questions from various chapters that you've covered so far. So you've covered 5 chapters, and you want to make sure that all the students receive some questions from each chapter. But you don't want all the students to receive the same questions in case students are passing along answers or doing the quiz together. So what you want to have is a pool of questions from each chapter that you can draw from randomly. So the first step to doing this, before we actually go to the quiz setup page, is to set up your question bank so that you're able to draw questions from the pools that you've created. So in order to get to your question bank, I'm going to go to the gear in the top right of my course page. I'm going to scroll down and click on more. And then at the bottom of this page, I have my question bank, and then I have questions and categories. So we're going to start with the categories, and you'll kind of see what I mean by my pools of questions. So I went ahead and set up an example for today's workshop. So I have my CTL workshop quiz here, and then I have subcategories called multiple choice and essay response. So for the purposes of the quiz that I'm about to set up, I want to make sure that every student gets 5 of my 10 multiple choice questions and maybe 2 of the 4 essay response questions. You'll see the way I've set up the rest of my question bank here. You can set up as many folders as you'd like, as many subcategories as you want, and you can do that down at the bottom here. So if I wanted to add a new parent category, I would select under parent category here. I would click on top for my class, and then I could call this, final exam, and then click add category. So now I have my final exam category there. And if I wanted to do my chapter I want to break up my questions by chapter, I could then select final exam as the parent category, type in chapter 1, and add category. And now I have a subcategory for my final exam. You can break these questions up however you'd like. So you could do it by difficulty level, by the concepts covered, learning objectives, however you want to do it, and you can have as many subcategories as you would like. But for this, we've already set up the questions here. So I have my multiple choice questions and I have my essay response questions here. So I'm going to go back to my sandbox, and I'm going to open up my workshop quiz random questions quiz. I'll click on the gear in the top right and click on edit quiz. And now the first thing I want to do is add my multiple choice questions. So I'm going to click add, and this time instead of clicking from question bank, I'm going to click on a random question. And then you'll see a page that looks like this, and then from the category I'm going to select, under my CTL workshop quiz, I'm going to select multiple choice, and I want, under number of random questions, I want 5 of these. So I'm going to click add random question, and now you can see I have my 5 questions added. So now I want to add my essay response. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'll go to add a random question, go to essay response this time, put in 2, and then add random question. So now I have my 5 multiple choice questions and my 2 essay response questions. So that's how you would set up your pools here. So say you had your, you put in your 5 chapter 1 multiple choice, your 5 chapter 2 multiple choice, but you didn't want it to show up together. So you didn't want the students to get all the chapter 1 questions, all the chapter 2 questions, and so you still wanted to shuffle your quiz. But what you don't want is to shuffle your essay response at the end within your multiple choice. Like, you don't want one student to get their essay question in the middle of their quiz and someone else to get it at the beginning and someone else to get it at the end. You want the essay questions to be at the end no matter what. So what eClass has added in is a feature called sections. So now if I wanted to split up my multiple choice from my essay response, if I click the add button in between the last multiple choice and the first essay response question, you'll see that I have the option to add a new section heading. So I'm going to click on that. So now I can call this section my essay response, and this section my multiple choice. And then I can actually shuffle the multiple choice or shuffle the essay response or whatever you want to do. So you have an extra layer of shuffling that you can do. You can use this for the previous quiz tip that we used as well, where we set up the multiple choice. You had every student receiving all the same questions. They could receive all the multiple choice questions in the top, shuffled, and then they could receive all of the long answer questions shuffled as well. So now we have one more type of exam that we want to cover, and we don't have too much time here, so I'll try to get through it fairly quickly. But this is the type where we have multiple versions of a quiz. So you can see I have labeled these versions. So this would be version A and version B. The key thing is you don't actually want to title them differently because you don't want students to know which version they're going to get. So the first thing we have to do in order to set up versions is to set up random groups of the students within the class. So if I go to participants in the top left here, and then I click on the gear and click on groups, what I can do is click on auto create groups. I'm going to say I want 2 groups because I have 2 versions of the exam. I have to move the video again. And then I'm going to click submit. Oh. So now you can see I have group A and group B, 3 students in group A, 2 students in group B. So now that I have that set up, I'm going to go back to my course page. I'm going to, this time, instead of going into the edit quiz page, I'm going to click on the edit button to the right of the quiz, click on edit settings, and then at the bottom of this page, I'm going to scroll down to where it says restrict access. And then I'm going to click add restriction, and I'm going to restrict access to this quiz by group. So I'm going to say students must match group A to access this quiz. And then the one key step here that a lot of instructors miss is you need to click on this eyeball to slash it out. What this means is that group A are the only people that are going to be able to see that that link even exists. If you don't click on that and put the slash through it, then all the students will see that multiple versions exist, but they will only be able to access the one that they have, but then they'll be able to know there's multiple versions of the quiz and kind of figure out who's got which version. So I'm going to click Save and Return to Course. And then you'll see that I have this version is only available to group A. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing to the second quiz. But this time I'm going to add restriction, do it by group, and say group B. And then click on the eyeball and save and return. So now I have two versions of the quiz, one visible to group A, one visible to group B, and neither group will know which version that they have.